If I believe there's a reason for this pain I'm going through, if I believe that leaving me was all that you could do, if I believe that I can feel you by my side, I'll make it through the night. If I believe that time will teach me how to find my way, if I believe that broken hearts grow stronger every day, if I believe that now you're dancing across the sky, I just might get by. If I believe that memories won't always hurt this much, if I believe that I will see your face again, I can wait till then. If I believe I'll hold you in my arms again, I can wait. I know that I can wait. I can wait till then. I can wait till then.
Hi, good evening. My name is Joanne Barker-Ravicchio, and welcome to the Somerville Overcoming Addiction Show. And I have a special guest tonight. Her name is Barbara. Hopkinson.
Right.
And we met back in
October.
last summer.
It was October, I think, in Washington, D.C.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. I knew it was last year.
Yeah.
It was October. And I really fell in love with what you were doing.
Thank you.
And you were taking pictures of anyone that wanted to, with messages on their arms.
Right. We call it Faces of Resilience.
That's
Yeah.
wonderful. And I asked my son, he was with me, and I asked him if he wanted to do it, but he had my granddaughter with them, and they were trying to see the Smithsonian, see all the free museums that were around. But,
Yeah.
and I don't think at that point he was ready to really, I don't know, express himself that way. I'm not quite sure how to say. But anyway, I'm glad that you came here because there's a lot about you that I didn't know.
Okay.
And I think that's wonderful.
Oh.
You know, your journey and what you went through and what you're trying to do to help others. That's a great, great thing. And I think
Thank
that's
you.
what helped me heal too, was to be able to, I wasn't able to help my son any longer.
Right.
So why not help others by finding a way for them, for their recovery, or for parents in grief, grieving to go to, in which we will talk about your group as well.
Yeah, sure. I'm
So
so
Barbara
sorry about
lives
your
in
son. Anyway.
Newburyport.
I do. I do.
Why don't you just discuss why you started what you
Okay. Well,
your journey?
I've had several losses, Started with a miscarriage, was my first child, and then I had two healthy children, Brent and Brad, and then my third son, when they were 6 and 4, my third son was Robbie, and he was full-term stillborn. So that was very tough. I had to come home and tell them their little brother wasn't coming home, from the hospital. But they grew up and thought everything was going great. Brent actually requested to go to a military high school. He wanted to be a pilot. And then he got an Army ROTC scholarship out to Arizona State University. And he had actually already passed his written aviation test and was just about to be commissioned as an Army officer when he borrowed a friend's motorcycle and lost control of it right on the ASU campus. And so he had just turned 21. He was getting engaged to a lovely woman named Laura, and he just had an incredible future ahead of him, but everything changed. So that loss, as you know, it's so devastating to lose a child. You just, everything stops. You just feel gutted like a fish, right? So, and then I was married 29 years at that point. Well, a year later, my husband left me for a younger woman, and so my 30-year marriage fell apart. But as part of that process, it actually got bad enough where I attempted suicide. And because his brother, Brad, who was 2 years younger, 19, he had gone off to college that following year, and he initially flunked out because of his grief. And now he has finished, and he's a successful chef and owns a restaurant, and that's all great. But at the time, it was just too many things all at once. And so, but what that turned out for me was a turning point, because I chose a method, carbon monoxide, really. So it gave me time to think, and I realized I couldn't do that to my remaining son. And it made me realize, I really have to kick myself in the butt here and make a choice to heal and climb out of this hole. So that's what I did. I went and started the Compassionate Friends of Greater Newburyport, which is there's 700 chapters in the U.S. It's the largest grief organization in the world. It's headquartered in Oak Brook, Illinois. But I started the Newburyport chapter because there wasn't one really within an hour of me. There are chapters in Reading and in Needham and in Boston, and some others. I think there's 17 of them in Massachusetts. But their focus is supporting family after a child, grandchild, or sibling dies, any cause, any age. So that was in 2003, and reaching out to help others really helped me heal. And I still run that chapter. We meet monthly, and we stagger our meetings from any of the other. There's one in Manchester, New Hampshire as well. We stagger our meetings so that if people want to go to more than one and they're willing to drive, they can do that.
Imagine that. 16 years you've been doing this.
Yeah, 16 years I've been doing this.
Does it feel like you just started it yesterday?
No, because I've had so many experiences. And then after several years, so that was in 2003 when I started it, and it really helped me heal and start to get control of my life. And I met my second husband, Jim, on Match.com. And I met him in 2005. We got married in 2006. And so worked on that. I used to work for IBM. I was in the corporate world at International Technology. I retired from there at the end of 2008, and then released my first book, which was a memoir about my experience of losing mostly my 21-year-old, but some with the others too. And that's A Butterfly's Journey, it's called as well. That's this book right here.
Looked it up.
And
Yeah.
see, to me, butterflies are a major symbol of transition, and they're in most grief organizations because they're just known as a huge symbol of transition. So I think of them as a transition from our life with our children to our life without our children, and then also as a transition of our child from a physical life to a spiritual life. But anyway, so I put that out. I released it in 2013 and felt like I wanted to do more, and on not just a local level, but on more of a national level. So I started a nonprofit called A Butterfly's Journey, and we focus on three major things. We have an online free resource center, so it's got 10 categories of resources for people. So there's TED Talks, there's books, there's music, there's articles, there's organizations, all different kinds, hundreds of resources, broad-based, that people might be able to look at and go through any time, day or night. And then I became, in 2015, I made it a nonprofit. I applied and got a 501c3. And I got certified from the Grief Recovery Institute as a grief recovery specialist. So I teach, they have a methodology. That methodology it was written initially by a bereaved dad, and it's been used for 40 years all over the world. So it's on 6 continents. And there's like 6,000 people certified as a grief recovery specialist. So I got that certification 4 years ago. And the third thing that I do with the nonprofit is these photo shoots. So people look at me, photo shoots for grief? You know, it seems very odd, but honestly, we don't talk about grief much in our culture.
No, we don't.
So the mission of Faces of Resilience is open expression around grief, loss, and love. So what I do is I go to grief events, so any sort of event that is related to grief, like the National Conference of Compassionate Friends, the National Conference for Bereaved Parents of the USA. I met you when it was a walk on the Capitol about the opioid crisis by Fed Up. I've done things at the Association for Death and Education Consulting, Walks to Remember, bereavement cruises. There's Journeys of Hope, Healing, and Health that actually do cruises. And we have grief groups and workshops on that, so I've done that as well. So all different kinds of things. And we'll bring a photographer and a whole setup and lights, take professional shots of people expressing themselves on their skin. So they write on their skin with washable magic markers. It washes right off. And then we send them the photos. So it's cathartic for them to be able to express themselves. And then when they get the photo, it's a catalyst for them to talk to others, their other friends and family. And there's nothing more healing about grief than talking about it.
Oh, absolutely.
And we find, at least with my chapter, where I have so many bereaved parents, people run from them. They catch them running around corners in supermarkets to avoid them. You know, they lose friends, they lose family, because these people are either afraid to talk about it or afraid to hurt them, or they can't think about it in the context of their own lives. But it's tough.
To tell you the truth, basically, a lot of things in our lives are similar.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Cool.
Actually,
Oh,
I
not so
retired.
cool.
I retired in 2007.
Yeah, okay.
I worked for Verizon. My ex-husband and I, we separated in 2007.
Okay.
And then we divorced in 2009. And then shortly after that, I lost my son, Frankie. And he had a motorcycle accident.
Oh, really? Wow.
But his accident didn't end his life. What happened was a 10-year struggle with opioids.
Oh, man, because that's what they gave him for pain at the
Yeah.
time. I can't tell you how many kids in my chapter, that's how they died. They started with a sports injury or some other injury or a vehicle accident, and they started on opioids, and then when they couldn't get them anymore, they switched to heroin.
That's exactly what happened.
And
to
some of them were clean for 6 or 12 months, but some idiot friend from that side of their life would give them a dose on their birthdays, but it was the same dose they had a year ago, and they couldn't tolerate it anymore, so they overdosed. It's so sad. I've got one young woman, a woman that was in my chapter, and she lost her grandson to cerebral palsy. That's how I met her, and she was in my chapter. And then her daughter, who was the little boy's mother, so she went through the loss of her son, and then she was in an abusive marriage. Anyway, it was all too much for her, and she ended up addicted. And she overdosed 9 times, and they brought her back with Narcan 9 times. And then the poor thing hung herself. I think she was only in her early 30s and creative and a lovely girl. Just couldn't take it.
So a lot of times there have been people that have committed suicide because of addiction, because they don't feel that they're ever going to be able to overcome the drug use.
Yeah, oh,
And
so sad.
they're so down at that point, and it's unfortunate, but I know there's quite a few of them.
Oh, yeah.
I know that I had an event for my son, it's a celebration of life.
Yes,
And
nice.
one of his friends came, and he had been with, my son went to see him the day that he died, the day before he died, and he didn't have time for him.
Oh.
And then after that event, within a couple of days, he hung himself.
Oh, sorry.
So,
It's a
but he
trigger. I
also
mean,
had
even in
a-
my case, it was a trigger. Something had happened that
Right.
got canceled that day that I was depending on. So it was just a trigger. And, you know, like I said,
And the thing is that we always need, sometimes people won't be, let's say, being 65 years old, you know, and this happened when I in my early 50s.
well, me too.
You never
It's a month
really.
before I turned 50 when my son died.
Yeah. Well, where you going, little guy?
He's so cute.
Yeah, I don't want him to chew on any wires. We'll get in trouble.
Okay.
You have to stay right here. So, what happened with me is that I lost my train of thought. See what you did to me? No.
I think you were talking about there was a friend that had committed suicide.
Yeah. And the thing, I had been seeing him, and he was in and out of jail because of heroin.
Yeah. So.
And then Frankie's last 4 months of his life, he changed to heroin.
Oh.
Because a lot of, he would purchase OxyContin. He worked for the post office. He made $52,000 a year.
Wow.
He would go and get loans. I mean, he wasn't one to go out and
Right.
steal from anyone
Yeah.
and whatnot. He would go and try to find the money.
Right.
And unfortunately, he got turned on to heroin, and that's it. 4 months later, he's gone.
It's hard to imagine if you haven't been, you know, in their skin, what that must be like, how awful it must be to struggle with that every day.
Oh, I can tell. I always say that they have their own stigma. They don't need anybody else's.
Yeah.
You know, whether it was in school that they got addicted because someone said, "Oh, try this," or you had an accident, like you said, a sports injury.
Yeah.
Well, they don't have to go to a doctor, but like, okay, let's try this. Why don't you try this? And then it was good for them in the beginning, and then all of a sudden now they're hooked on to the drugs.
Well, that and all the fentanyl that's laced into it now, it's poison, you know, and so many kids that think they're getting heroin get fentanyl,
Right.
and they die from that.
There's been studies done, and they've done the data, and actually, it's been reported that 85% of the deaths are due to fentanyl and carfentanil, and not because of heroin. That heroin's not really.
Wow.
There's not that much heroin out there at all.
I guess I don't really understand why do dealers want to cut the stuff with fentanyl because they're going to lose their buyer. So how does that help them? I'm not sure I understand. Is it just because it's cheaper and like for that one short-term period?
God knows.
I've always wondered, could somebody explain that to me? I mean, I was 30 years in business. I don't understand the business sense in that. You know?
No, I don't either.
Yeah. So it's kind of crazy. Oh God, little guy looks like he's fallen asleep. That's so
Good.
cute.
And he won't be wanting to go and eat any wires.
But I know some of the photos that we're seeing probably up in the back here are of photos we took of people that have lost to overdose in the Washington D.C. photo shoot that we did. We did two of them, one around Artful Advocacy event and one with the Walk on the Capitol. Remember, which are the ones were you? Because your photo is in here someplace. With
Yeah.
yeah.
I think that when we had gone, that was when. First of all, we.
Were we outside or inside? Because we did
We're
one
outside.
of each. Okay, that was the Walk on the Capitol then.
Right, and that we had gone to the Shackler Art Museum.
Yes.
And we were out in front of there with pictures of our loved ones and walking in front of them and telling people.
And then we
this
set
is
something
what
up
their
right
blood
on.
money. This is, it may be free to get in, but this is blood money. That's,
right. Yeah.
We had tried, and then we went up to the mall. Well, it wasn't the mall.
We were Pennsylvania Avenue. Yeah, we were right on Pennsylvania Avenue because we could see the Capitol from where we were.
Well, we
really
started to
interesting.
walk up to the White House, and
right.
when we had done that, I had my granddaughter with me, and what she was saying, "Fed up,
Yeah.
fed up.
Right.
We need
That was the
billions,
organization.
not millions,
Right.
for treatment today.
Yeah.
Do you hear my roar?" Well, she was very good,
Yeah.
but no.
Yeah, Fed Up was the organization.
The one good thing about all that we've been doing, I mean, 2015 was my first time that I went to Washington.
Okay.
And that's where I was introduced to the Fed Up program,
Yeah.
as well as Fed Up and Face the Addiction with Greg Williams.
Okay.
And I was really amazed, and I say this a lot on the show, is that we walked all the way from the mall to the White House, and no one was there from the press. No one was there for TV station. Nobody even knew we were there, Barbara.
Wow.
And it was very impressive.
Yeah.
You know, and
No, it was that day. They had several speakers before they did the walk, and we had the photo booth in one of the corner of
you
one
would
of the
never have
speakers.
believed who was here that time. Steven Tyler was here. Sheryl Crow was there. The Attorney General, the Surgeon General was there talking. We had so many people from Massachusetts. Governor Weld was there. Patrick Kennedy was there. It was like totally amazing. And then Obama live streamed, and nobody knew we were there.
Wow. How is that possible?
I don't know. And that was at the time that the FDA just approved OxyContin for 11-year-olds.
Oh, no, really?
Yes, and we would not let that person talk. He was up there, and we started chanting, FDA, why are you killing our kids today?
Oh, my God. Wow.
And we kept doing that and kept doing that, so the man did not even have an opportunity to talk, and he had to leave.
You know, I just saw something, and I wish I'd remembered exactly what it was, but just the other day, I think it was on Facebook, and it said there was something that's relatively minor in comparison, and they had one death from it, or I thought it was a child's toy or something, and they banned it right away. But yet, look at this, and that's not getting banned, all right? You know?
Stay right there.
He's laying down. He's not so laid out yet. But you know, just something like that, and so many. I don't know. It just seems ridiculous that they wouldn't do more about. Well, unfortunately, it's the money, and the pharmaceutical industry has more money than God.
But no,
They fund so many things.
I just want you to know that on August 2nd, we're still waiting to hear the outcome of a court case that Maura Healey is bringing against the pharmaceutical companies as well as the CEO and the Shackler family. And they want to have it dismissed. And, of course, we don't.
Yeah, of course.
So we have a group called Team Sharing. Have you ever heard about Team Sharing?
No. Mm-mm.
So Team Sharing, the only way you can be a part of this group is, and nobody really wants to be a part of it, is when you lose your children.
Right.
Or a loved one.
Yeah.
So, and there's so many different chapters, just like yourself. And there's a lot more. Like, I remember having Cheryl. Cheryl came on the show a little over a year ago, and she just started the Team Sharing.
Oh.
And now it's in lots of different states, Virginia,
Okay.
it's
I'll
up
have to
there
look
in New
that up.
Hampshire.
So it's Team Sharing, and it's related to loss of a child. Is it related to addiction or any cause? To addiction.
Addiction.
Okay, no, I'd love to. Maybe you can introduce me, and I can see if there's anything I can do to help.
I'm sure that I'm going to mention the vigil, that she'll be there.
Oh, good.
She said she was going to come, and I'm going to personally invite her to come that day. So I will mention that since we just started talking about it. September 29th from 2 to 5, we're going to be having a vigil here in Somerville. We do it every year, but normally we do it outdoors. And last year it was just so unsuccessful because it was so windy.
Yeah.
I wasn't able to.
New England weather is hard to predict.
Yeah, and I wasn't able to show the pictures of the lost loved ones. So I did do it the following week on my show. I just showed all the pictures because that's why a lot of people come.
Yeah.
They come to see their children's pictures and light a candle. And what we normally have is I have Tom Ross, who was a part of the fire department here in Somerville.
Mm-hmm.
He's been doing it for me for the past 6-7 years.
That's nice.
He comes in and he rings the bell after every name is mentioned.
Oh, nice.
And
Now, is it just kids from Somerville, or do you do it from
no,
other?
they're every.
Okay, well, I'd like to introduce you or ask the people in my chapter that have lost children.
I would love you to do that, and then you can send me
have
the
them
pictures.
included. Yeah, I'll have them send me the pictures.
We will actually include it in the vigil.
Yeah, that's great.
So I have a month to get that done. So as soon as you can get and ask people, we can.
Sure. Yeah, I'll do that right away.
Because I'm going to take more than one vigil. Like we did one last year at Boston Common, and it was a mass vigil.
Uh-huh.
So we do have those pictures
Yep.
from that. And so there'll probably be repeats of different individuals because it's really hard to go through all those vigil pictures and find the
Yes, right.
duplicates. So I don't want to forget anybody,
No, right.
you know. And we do have a few that have passed on in the city. Because last year on Overdose Awareness Day, we lit up the City Hall purple and we put flags of, there was 157 flags for all the people lost since 2002. And then they had one bigger flag for any that were, that they had forgotten. So, and now the new thing is, and I would like to mention this on the show, hopefully we can get City Hall to do it as well, is they're doing, and then in September it is recovery.
Oh,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, and they do have a walk to recovery, which is on September 16th.
Okay, yeah, I'd like information on those.
I will
just,
give you
just
that
so
information.
I can let it. I'll put it out from my chapter, and even on my national site. What's the now? Is it for drugs or also for alcohol? Or is it
Well,
focused
it's
on
addiction
drugs?
in general.
Okay.
It's not just for drugs.
Okay. Oh, good.
It's alcohol.
Okay.
It's called, more does it every year. So it's
Substances.
like 28 years now, and it's
Okay.
Mass Organization for Addiction Recovery. So
Okay.
they always have the walk, and they usually have the walk from Boston City Hall to the State House.
Okay.
But the State House is being repaired,
Yeah.
and the auditorium, so they changed it and brought it over to Faneuil Hall.
Oh, okay.
So I think that
Yeah, it's a
they
lot easier to
decided to
walk
keep
around
it
there. Yeah.
because
That's
it's
a nice
really a
good area to
beautiful
walk. Yeah.
area,
Yeah,
and
it
it's
is.
a nice hall.
Yeah.
And afterwards, they do have someone from recovery,
Mm-hmm.
like the arts, if they're musicians or
Yeah.
or if they sing, or even if they're artists. So they do have like a little segment after the event. I'm going to go this year.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, unfortunately,
sounds
it's done
nice.
during the day, and I work, and I
Yeah.
don't. Since I'm retiring, I will take that day off.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
it's
that I can
important.
go in. I had done it before. You know,
Yeah.
I've gone to a lot
Yeah,
of
it
them.
happens all around us. We just lost one of my very good friends, lost her stepdaughter just a couple of weeks ago to
and
addiction,
is
but
it-
more alcohol based, but she was
Right.
also diabetic, so it was a
Oh, yeah.
one complicated the other, right? So,
Absolutely.
and I've got a stepson who struggles. You know, he's been great. He's recovering, so hopefully that'll stay in place too, and just other friends that it's all around everybody. It's so
Definitely.
common.
Between
It's such a
alcohol and
struggle,
drugs.
right?
And now we have legalized marijuana.
Yeah, yeah.
So why
I
don't you-
swear I don't know a lot about that, but so the reason I'm bringing this out is there's a picture, and I meant to go check the page, see if I could just find it real quickly, because it might even be up on one of these background pictures. One of my friends who lost her son to overdose, and these pictures are expressing yourselves, but this woman lost her son to overdose, and it sticks in my mind what she said, because she said, "No blame, no shame, just love." And I love that. Her name is Mary. And if I can't find it in here, it'll be one of the ones that come up on the back.
Because that's what they need, is the love.
Yeah, and it's just, you know, again, it's like trying to avoid the stigma and just say, you know, it was a struggle, and oh well, anyway. But anyway, so what this book is about is the first in a series of photos where people, you know, at these photo shoots, these faces of resilience, because all these people that have lost, you know, their children and grandchildren and siblings and even spouses and parents and everything, they have to be resilient in order to survive this stuff. It's such a traumatic loss. And so we encourage them to write on their skin, and then we take their photos. It's cathartic for them to do it. We take their photos, we send it to them, so it's a catalyst, as I said, for them to talk about their grief. And so there are several photos of people that have lost to overdose in this.
And I will mention that at our vigil, Barbara will be there, and she will be taking pictures.
Yes, yeah, at the vigil I will be. That's right. We're going to
And
come
she
with a
will
photographer.
she will
yeah?
have her her grief group there. So in case anybody wants to come and talk to her,
Yep,
there will
we
be
have-
several.
Right, so I do the monthly support meeting in Newburyport at the Immaculate Conception Parish Center. It's non-denominational, just a place to do it. Room 209 at 7:30 on fourth Mondays in Newburyport, and that's for anybody who's lost a child, grandchild, or sibling, any age, any cause. And then I am a certified grief recovery specialist, so I could work with people for all kinds of loss, not just loss of children, but all kinds of loss, through this methodology. And the thing I like about the methodology is it's action-based and it's not long and drawn out. One-on-one, it's 7 weeks. And it's just there's tools all the way through it that we use. There's a loss history graph and a relationship graph, and you're talking about things around the myths of grief and around the short-term energy-relieving behaviors, which might be alcohol or drugs. And then you're actually forming undelivered communications. You're going through things that might have been apologies or forgivenesses or other emotional statements that you wish you had been able to deliver but weren't able to. And it gives you a chance to do that and then write it and basically read it, out loud and say goodbye to it, say goodbye to the pain. And it's quite effective. It's, like I said, it's been used for 40 years all over the world. But we do that. Here's Grief is the Price of Love. This mother, she lost her daughter to overdose. So many in here. If I find that other one, I'll bring it up. But anyway, it was a lovely saying. No shame, no blame, just love.
I think that's really wonderful. And while we're here on the show, I just want to say that I'm very proud of you.
Oh, well, thank you. How sweet.
Because here you are going through your struggles.
It helps so much. I think I knew instinctively that reaching out to help others would help me, and it has probably more than any other single thing. Mm-hmm. It's really...
And that's basically...
And I'm proud of you, too, for doing the same thing, right?
It's like, not only, like I said, I went through a divorce and I lost a child.
Yes.
Right. And my youngest was living in North Carolina at the time, so I was alone. When you talk about being alone and not having anyone, people do not know how to deal with other people's grief.
Yes.
Some of them don't know how to say, I'm sorry, is there anything I could do for you?
Right. And most people, what they really want is they just want you to maybe say the name of their loved one, acknowledge that they lived, ask about them, and then just listen. Just don't run. It's very simple.
But
it's hard for people to do.
A lot of people have run. They don't know how to talk to you, so they're no longer with you.
And they don't have to talk to you. All they have to do is say, I'm sorry for your loss. Is there anything I can do? And just listen. Would you like to talk about it? And don't run. But it makes them it's a lot of people, not everybody, but it makes a lot of people very uncomfortable.
No, I noticed that myself. It's like in the very, very beginning, you had lots of people around you. And then after, it's not even the shock or the numbness that you go through burying your child, because from the point when I started to the end, right? I even went up and I said the eulogy. And then in the end, when we were at the casket, I waited until everything was taken out and they closed the casket, and then we went to the burial grounds.
Right.
But I was there from the very beginning to the end and went through the whole thing, because that's what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
I'm his mother.
Yeah.
And as a mother, even though your child's not alive, you're going to be with him till the very, very, very end. Mm-hmm.
When I talk
still not an end, because you still think about them, you still talk about them.
Oh yeah, and I believe I know their spirit continues and exists. But when you say that in the shock, it's like, your body puts you in a numb state to protect you, to get through that first basic. And in my experience with all the bereaved parents I've dealt with, they actually hit bottom about 4 to 6 months or 3 to 6 months after the death, because that's when all the numbness wears off and the reality sets in that it's not going to change, that they really have lost their life. I do a workshop now on resilience. I've been doing it at a lot of these national conferences and things, and just 10 different tips about that. And one of them is recognizing, the R in resilience, recognize that your loss has collateral damage and it's going to be with you for life. So you really need to make a choice to heal and to take some action to try to do some things. And it's not just time, right? I don't mean that to sound not hopeful, because it really is. I mean, I'm fine. I'm really okay, after all of this loss. But I worked hard at it.
16 years for you, 17?
It's 17 years for my son, for the older son, longer than that for the babies, and less than 2 years for my husband. Yeah. But,
So your second husband died as well?
No, my first husband divorced me.
Right.
He's still alive. Right. My second husband died. Widowmaker heart attack suddenly on the way to work. We had tickets for a show that night. Yeah. So that was very sudden. Thank you. But, once I started, especially with my son, when I got to the point where I could think about his life as a gift, not just a loss, that was a big turning point for me. And now when I think of him, I don't think about the pain of the loss. I think about all the crazy things we did, riding front seats of roller coasters all day, or he took me an hour one time to talk me into doing a bungee jump with him, stuff like that. That's what I think of, and I think of all the fun times we had, not all the pain associated with it.
Right. Well, it's unfortunate because a lot of times that's what you hear is a lot of negative.
Yeah.
You don't hear the positive.
Right.
And so like I said, if you could turn it around and
people
think
feel
about the
guilty,
positive thing.
they feel guilty when they start to feel better. And I'm thinking, no, what is your child, what do you think any loved one or your child wants you? Of course they want you to feel better. They don't want you to be miserable, forever.
They'll never be forgotten.
No, and like I said, I'm really convinced that they're still here and they're with us and they're looking after us, and I've had several signs, and
So haven't I.
Yeah. So it's really I still have a relationship with my sons and my husband. It's just not physical one. I think of it as, okay, maybe he's in Tokyo, or he's in, someplace on the other side of the world where I can't physically see him and talk to him and hug him, but I can feel him and I can, talk like that.
I think that a lot of people have that same experience.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, they don't feel good about talking about it. Like, I remember, I do mention this too on the show, is that I was sitting, my son, through divorce and everything, he always said to me that my song was The Climb by Miley Cyrus.
Okay.
Getting on the other side. And all of a sudden the song came on a week after he had passed. And I was in the living room with my niece, and he was very, very close to her.
Yeah.
And when I'm watching it, like I think it was like MTV or something, and I quickly looked over at the TV, and then all of a sudden, I felt a hug. But this hug was it was like a bear hug.
I get it. Yeah,
It's not like
I've
I
experienced
think
that too.
I felt something. I actually felt
Yep.
it. And I looked at my niece and I said, "You're going to think I'm crazy, but I just got hugged." And she said to me, "I did too."
Oh.
So the two
Yeah.
people that he loved, the two women in
how
his
sweet.
life,
Yep.
he hugged both of us.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's lovely. So I actually started a book on signs. I've got to find some time to work back on it. But I want it to be things like that are really kind of irrefutable, things that are kind of definite. And I'll give you one example if I can. That's the probably most striking one. I had a friend, a musician friend, and she was in my house, and I actually witnessed her channeling a song, and she looked around and I said, "Where did that come from?" Because it was too complex for her to have made it up. And she pointed his picture out and said that's where it came from. She didn't know him. But fast forward, once he figured out that he could talk to her, he'd give her messages for me. And so this one particular time when I was renting my house, and I was moved into a rental house, and we'd put all the boxes in, and I said, "I'm going to take a walk before I unpack." And as I'm walking back to the house, which she had never been there, she texted me and said, "Brent says be careful going up your front steps, Mom." I said, okay, I'm kind of used to getting the messages now. I go, and the entire length of the wooden step was cracked. So if I would have stepped on the outside edge of it, I would have fallen and potentially gotten hurt. Wow. So I want a book full of signs like that are really, she had no idea, she had never been there. It's pretty hard to refute that kind of sign.
That's true. Just like I took, for some reason I said to my son, Patrick, I said, let's go up to let's go up to Salem. Why don't we go and have a reading? So I brought him
Salem,
there.
Mass?
Yeah.
Yep.
And I brought him in to this particular, her name was Phyllis.
There's a lot of good mediums in Salem, I think, yeah.
Yeah, well, she's not there.
Oh.
I don't know where she went lately.
I knew one Kevin there, Kevin
well,
Cohen.
Phyllis Brewer, it was another name, but Brown. And she said, I don't know what you're doing here, but your brother's standing back of you and he wants to talk to you. And she started to talk to him about different things, and it's like she would never have known that.
Yeah, no.
You know?
No, I've got lots
So-
of experiences with mediums that there's no way they would have known all these things.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they knew a couple that, one was at Kevin Cohen in Salem. I've got a friend I've known for 30 years before she was a medium, Emerald, Laura Emerald. And then there's another one in the corner of kind of New Hampshire and Maine, southeast corner, Raylene Souza. Very trustworthy, genuine mediums. And, you know, some of the sessions I had with them, they'd know, like, what kind of, these are people that I didn't know, like with Kevin and stuff, I never knew him before. He knew what kind of car he drove.
Wow.
You know, and he knew what, you know, what had happened. They usually recognized that he was in a military uniform from his high school ROTC program. Because that's my favorite picture of him, and it's somewhere in here, I think, too, on one of these. It'll be flashing past, in a uniform with a medals and a big red plume, you know, hat for when they were doing dress parades or whatever.
That's really remarkable.
Yeah.
It really is. I mean,
But yeah, no, they always.
I'm
know
going
all
to tell you
kinds of
another
things.
thing.
Okay.
They told me that that I will get messages from him. So
Yeah.
one day, my grandson, Mason, and my Frankie, they had this bond.
Oh,
And
nice.
Mason was like not even a year old,
Yeah.
and they would play with my intercom. And then one day I'm outside, I'm hearing all the stuff going on in my house because it's stuck. They would play with it so much that now the intercom was stuck, so I said,
Right.
well, forget this. I went in and I disconnected all the wires
Okay.
because I don't want my neighbors to hear
Right.
everything that's
Right.
going on in my house.
Right.
And they can still play with it, but it's not going to work the same. It's not going
Right.
to work.
Yeah.
And the woman said to me, you're going to get messages from Frankie. Well,
They say any energy-based things, like
Right, the-
electric things,
the doorbell rang.
they can handle
At 6
better.
o'clock, and now that's the time that he used to come home from work.
Yeah.
You know, he used to get off at Davis Square and walk there's a walking path, come home, and sometimes he'd forget his key, ring the doorbell.
Yeah.
So that's fine. I went and looked out the window, nobody there. And I'm saying, it's not possible. I disconnected all those wires.
Oh.
So then my ex-husband moved into the house, and I decided that I moved to Revere Beach for a year.
Okay.
I had a nice
Yeah.
nice condo on the beach, and although it didn't help me, I didn't get over anything. You know what I mean? It's like I used to walk the beach
See,
every day.
walking on the beach helped me. Yeah,
You
I live
wanna
on the
know
beach.
something?
Yeah.
I walked once while I lived there. Once.
Well, maybe that's why.
I don't know. So anyway,
Nature does help.
my ex-husband moved in. He said, do you mind if I move in the apartment? I said, no, go right ahead. Move in there. So he moved in, and he called me and says, Joanne, the doorbell rang. I said, it did? He says, yeah. And you did disconnect all those wires. Couldn't have happened. So
Wow.
we have a doorbell that was ringing, and
That's
and
amazing.
it's not possible that
Yeah,
it could have
I
happened.
love that. I'll have to put the signs. I love stuff like that. Yeah.
So you're going to have to put that on your book.
Oh, yeah. I'm happy to. We could go on. I mean, I've got other signs as well.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it had happened years ago with my mother. You know, my mother died when I was like 21.
Mm.
9 months before my wedding, my mother passed on.
Oh,
And it's
sorry.
like I did get signs from her. So, yeah, I'm a believer.
yeah. No. And it's hopeful. It gives you hope because really, especially with the child, you really only care. Your primary role in life as a parent is to protect that child.
Right.
And when you can't do that anymore, for me, that was the worst part. I had to make sure that he was okay. So here I was, working for IBM, international technology stuff, traveling all the time. And, we didn't talk about stuff like spirituality and things like that,
No, of course not.
So now, when my son died, as a matter of fact, I had a boss that I was trying to change departments, and he wouldn't let me. And I said to him, the worst thing that could happen to me has. You have no power over me anymore. I don't give a darn about, all these deadlines and quotas and things. You either let me out of this, because it was a really high-pressure job, out of this role, or I'll just leave the company. So we did, and everybody else was great. And then I got another job that was my best job in IBM, and a very understanding boss. But we weren't talking, of course, about things like spirituality and afterlife and all that. And when my son died, I was on a mission to figure out if he was okay, because it was so devastating not to be able to protect my child anymore,
And the same thing happened to me. I say all these years, and he's never come to me. I wondered why. And I was just told that I'm blocking it from happening.
Well, it could. Some people, I know, I haven't had so much direct contact, although I can feel him sometimes. And meditation helped me get to that point where I could improve my intuition and feel him at least. So I get a feeling now, I'll like break out in sobs, not sad sobs, but just all of a sudden, and I know he's with me. Some kind of like this real emotional thing. But he came to me the night he died because I was so mad at him for getting on that motorcycle. He had such an amazing future, and it just put everybody's life into such a turmoil. And I was so mad at him that he woke me up the night he died at like 3 o'clock in the morning saying, "Forgive me." And I realized I had to forgive him in order for his spirit to move on. But then I didn't have any other of that direct contact in the 17 years since, other than I get these feelings and intuitions. But you can work on your intuition, I think, with meditation and quiet time, which I'm terrible at because I'm busy like you are.
Oh my goodness, I know. You are very, very
well,
busy.
so are you. But so it's hard to make yourself sit.
No, you've accomplished a lot more than I have.
No, I don't think
that's
so.
Wonderful.
Well, thank you. But
Really, I'm a recovery coach.
Yeah, there you go. That's good.
But I haven't completed. I took the class to be a recovery coach. It's a 2-week course, and I've been taking little. The state wants you to take other different classes, and I haven't completed them all. And plus, you have to have 500 hours.
Wow. That's a big commitment.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to take
what
all
type
the
of
hours
things
I've been
are they
doing this-
recommending? Like, what kind of things are helpful for recovery? So, a recovery coach, I assume, is helping people stay in recovery?
No, helping them find recovery.
Find recovery. Okay.
The thing is that what we do is that we don't. As a mother, you tell your children.
Yeah.
That you want them to do this, this, and this.
Right.
But a recovery coach suggests those things, and then finally they have to find where they need to be. So you have compassion, you care about them, and I think it's great. A lot of times, many recovery coaches have already been in recovery.
That makes sense.
And clinicians and whatever, and that they've already had that problem. And found recovery, so it makes someone feel that there's hope for them. To be able to do that.
That's lovely. I mean, you need hope. You need hope to survive.
Because
that's why people don't survive,
how many
right?
times do you go to a psychiatrist I've never really gone to a psychiatrist, but just think about this. You find someone. Yeah, well, I probably should have. After I had lost my son, gone and had counseling. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. But when
I was in therapy
we were young,
2.5
I said,
years,
"What are you,
probably.
crazy?"
Yeah. Oh, that's funny.
It wasn't really
old
something
stigma?
that was accepted.
Really? Oh, okay.
Now it's like I had to go and
Everybody's got a therapist, right?
Yeah, I probably should have had a therapist. I mean, I was able to help
useful.
myself.
Yeah.
I was able to. It took a long time, but finally I got to that point because, like you said, there's so many stages of grief.
Yeah, and it's funny, the methodology that I teach doesn't even believe in stages.
No?
Because they're basically, and see, even the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross stages are basically, they were created talking about end of life, not grief, not after death. So they're very misunderstood, and they also are interpreted as being serial, and they're not. They're all over the place. You're angry, and then you're then you're in denial, and then you're accepting, and then back and forth. So
it's not steps. It's all
mixed up. But this is really, I think, the methodology anyway we teach. It just basically says it's really not that defined. Everybody grieves differently, and they grieve on their own timeline, and they should be able to do that.
Right.
And because you can't anticipate or judge or guess what it's going to be like for somebody else because you didn't have that relationship between that lost loved one and that person. And so it could be totally different. It could have been a positive or a negative relationship, but they still had a loss.
Right.
You know, sometimes I actually had one woman come to me because I also do pet loss classes, and that puppy was the only child she ever had. So losing that puppy was like losing a child to her. So people think, oh no, they dismiss it as kind of crazy. Well, I could see it in this woman. I mean, the pain she was going through, I could recognize, you know, because I've been through it.
Pain is pain.
Yeah.
It's a pet.
And it's, yeah, it's just not all that useful to compare, I don't think, because basically everybody's got the right to grieve in their own way and in their own time. And it's very difficult. Genders grieve quite differently. And when you're in the same household, that's one of the things. That wasn't the reason my marriage broke up, but it was definitely a catalyst. We grieved totally differently, right? We just we're different people. You know, he was an introvert, I was an extrovert. You know, I reached out to try to do things outside, he went inside. Internally, and we just were so different, and we didn't know enough to give each other, I think, enough space that you don't expect don't expect others to grieve like you do, I guess is the message.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but
It's
it's not easy when you're going through it.
no, it isn't.
No, it's really tough.
You know, we tried. I mean, I even tried to work with my ex-husband. I mean, Frankie died after,
After you were
after
separated.
we got divorced.
Yeah.
I got divorced on my birthday. I think that's the best present I've ever received.
This is really, I've got one like that, but they laid me off from a 10-year job I was in the day after my mother's funeral. So that was that kind of thing, but it wasn't. Yeah. I know.
Imagine that.
And
yeah.
it's funny, you look back at this stuff and think, awful, and at the time you're devastated. But looking back, there was a lot of good things that came out of things that followed on after that. It was after that job that I got the job with IBM, for instance, you know. And it's just...
It's amazing what you have done.
Well, I love doing things and trying things, and I travel. I love travel. It's one of my passions. So I've been
When I called you, you were what, was it Pennsylvania?
No, well, my last two photo shoots were in Philadelphia and St. Louis, and
Okay.
I'm going to Winnipeg, Canada next week. So I'm taking it international. So and we're going to London with the photo shoots in November. I've been in 54 countries, so I just love it. I did it, probably 35 of those were related to work, and the rest of them have been keep going. So I keep wanting to add.
That's wonderful.
I love it. Yeah, I just love it. I love different cultures and people and travel, and so everything's so interesting. Every place is so interesting.
I'm telling you, I'm impressed.
Oh, well, thank you. Need to be.
I'm going to have to watch what you're doing. And I'll have to come to some of your classes.
Yeah, that'd
I
be.
would love to be a part of that because I've been trying to find, like I told you about Mercy Street.
Yes, yeah,
And-
how
and
interesting.
I've been wanting so badly to get it here. But the thing is that I wouldn't be able to facilitate it because you need to have someone, the way this group runs is you have a clinician and you have someone from the church
Okay,
working together
Okay.
with this group. of
Right.
People that are from all different,
right.
like I said, it could be a sibling, it could be the parents, it could
Yeah.
be someone in recovery,
Uh-huh.
could be parents that have lost their children.
But it's
just like
related
we're
to
all-
addiction.
we're
To
all- yeah, our
addiction.
addiction.
Okay.
And it
that's
didn't
nice.
matter if it's alcohol or whatnot. And
Yeah.
and there's speakers every week that talk about their experience.
And it's outside of not just New Hampshire. It's in multiple states.
No, I
Oh.
don't know if it is or not.
Oh, all right. Be
But,
interesting. 'cause I was
I'm
gonna
not
say.
quite sure. All I know is that it's in Plastow, New Hampshire. And Denise Sullivan and Pastor Aaron, I can't remember his last name, isn't that terrible, run that program, and I really, really liked it.
That's
And I
nice.
liked the fact that it wasn't just for grieving parents. It wasn't for, it was like everybody all in one room. And what you got from it is the person in recovery is learning how that parent feels about losing their loved one. And someone that's like in a sober home that's halfway, like in
So
recovery.
the attendees are in recovery in addition to parents that have lost
Yeah, we're all in there
children?
together.
Wow, that's nice. Yeah.
And you're actually
Well, I imagine you could learn a
talking-
lot from each other. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's what's
Yeah.
happening is that you learn from it. And I don't know if you've ever, Anne Marie Trampaglia, she She's has a group called Angels of Addiction.
Okay.
And she lost her daughter to an overdose. But what she does is she paints their pictures. So you take photos, and she takes pictures of them and adds color, and she actually does canvases of them, and is doing a show in New Hampshire right now for the next month, September and October. She's been to Washington. She brought her pictures. She's got over 200 pictures, and she did do one of Frankie.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I think she wasn't she in Washington at Fed Up?
She
That sounds familiar to me. Not so much the name, but seeing those photos. They were
Yeah.
pretty powerful. Yeah, not
Yeah.
photos, those paintings.
Yeah, those paintings.
Right.
So, I know she was in Washington,
Yeah.
and the
Yeah,
thing is,
interesting.
it's
It's lovely. There are a lot of different things, and that's how a lot of bereaved parents reach out and do something, because it's just so healing.
There's another
and
man named
it's
John
help.
Lally who was at August 2nd when we were at Superior Court for that case against the pharmaceutical companies. He had taken pictures of our loved ones, blown them up into poster size, and what we did was, it says the city they came from and 2 words describing them.
Oh, cool.
Frankie was congenial and caring, so I had those 2 words.
Yeah.
And we had them all. He brought them up from Connecticut. He's from Connecticut, and his son was Tim, and the name of his group is called Today I Matter.
Nice.
And I
It's
thought
lovely
that
that all these people are doing all these.
so that's why a lot of things are happening now. Do you know that the pictures and the group, there were all different groups there. There wasn't just one particular group.
Right. Yep.
There was an article in Time
Yeah.
magazine.
Yeah. Oh,
Now,
it's such
from
a it's such an epidemic.
2015, where there was nothing
Right.
about our 2-day episode, to now we're being recognized
Yeah.
because there's too many deaths.
No, it's an epidemic.
Right.
And it really is hit hard in this part of the country, but it's an epidemic in a lot of parts of the country. It's so
6 a day
devastating.
die in Massachusetts alone.
Really? Wow.
And you say to yourself, why aren't
Right. Yeah, we're
they
doing
taking
something.
this so seriously?
Right.
Do you know Triple E is here for the first time since 2013? They had that on the news. And people will get all upset about that, but yet we have all these loved ones that just die just like that from fentanyl and carfentanil.
Yeah.
And they're not going to come back.
Right.
And we don't worry about that as much.
Yeah. Well, it's all tied into the complicated health industry, and there isn't much, like the mental health, it's not good care, right? I mean,
Right.
they let them go if they're in a hospital, if they just say, okay, they can basically check themselves out when they need help, or for suicide prevention or things like that. It's broken. One of my friends in Atlanta, she lost her son to suicide, but she's teamed together with, some other people, and she's doing a retreat at my house on Plum Island in September for mothers that have lost to suicide or overdose. I don't think there's many spots left, but Mindpeace, it's mindpeace.com, and her name is Elaine Alpert. And
So I'm going to have to reach out to you more.
Yeah,
because I really am interested in everything that's possible.
And on my website, which is abutterfliesjourney.org, and that's FLYS, it's possessive, not plural, because there's a free resource center. And the resources is 10 categories. So there's all these different, like I said, there's TED Talks and organizations and books and all that. But there's really a lot of resources out there for people, for all different kinds of things. And I'm actually thinking about expanding it and then adding categories for like suicide and overdose and things like that, and hiring somebody to help me do some more research because it's broad-based.
Guess what? 15
over?
seconds.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it's over.
That was quick, yeah. A Compassionate Friends, a Great Interview Report that's behind us right now.
Yeah.
Well, it's so nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it was a pleasure. I'd like to have you come back again.
Well, I'd love to.
Yeah, we'll see what else she's doing.
All right.
What's Barbara doing? No, and I really would like to come up and visit you.
I would love
New
that.
Report to begin
Good.
with.
Please come and visit me.
I
Come.
will. You just have to tell
have
me.
a glass of wine on my deck.
You have to write everything down for me so that I can call you.
Yes.
When you're in Massachusetts.
Most of the time.
Yeah. Well, YouTube is still on, and I'm glad you're a good boy.
Yeah, that little guy. You were
And
very
I'm
good.
going to have him come in and shut this off because
Okay.
eventually I'll do it myself. I haven't done it yet. Because I always had help, lots of help. Now look at me. Are you going to try to follow me now? Hi, Stuart. Can we shut this off now?
Yeah, we didn't know it was closing, so it wasn't much of a closing, but oh well.
Oh, that's all right.
Where is?
Yeah, because I looked up and I go, oh, I don't want to stop her right now.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize
no,
that because
no.
yeah,
But that's sometimes.
I didn't see any clock. Was there someplace I could have saw that it was running out of time? Oh, I can't see that. I can't see
so
that.
that's what I looked up and I said, oh.